Ethiopia's parliament removes 3 rebel groups from the country's list of designated terrorist organizations. Another use for 3D printing, creating synthetic bones for grafts. And in a race to save the northern white rhino, scientists have succeeded in creating hybrid embryos. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. The Ethiopian parliament has taken 3 rebel groups off the country's list of designated terrorist organizations. Lawmakers unanimously approved a resolution Thursday that removes the terrorist designation from the Oromo Liberation Front, Ogaden National Liberation Front, and Ginbot 7. The cabinet of new Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who continues to chart a path of reconciliation, submitted the resolution to Parliament last week. The Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Fitsum Arega, says the move will encourage groups to use peaceful political discourse to achieve political ends. Fitsum said the cabinet has also proposed a law that would grant amnesty to people and groups prosecuted on charges of armed struggle and crime against the constitutional order. The government has enacted sweeping reforms in recent months following years of criticism that Ethiopia was a repressive state. Officials have released thousands of prisoners arrested under anti-terrorism laws and dropped charges against Ginbot 7 leader Behahun Nega, who was sentenced to death in 2009 for an alleged assassination plot. For additional insight on the rapid developments in Ethiopia, Tedele Lema, editor-in-chief and founder Addis Standard Magazine, joins me live via Skype from Frankfurt, Germany. Good evening.
Good evening, Vincent.
Now, Tedele, the smile on your face tells me that you are actually pleased by the announcements you're getting out of Addis Ababa. What do you make of the latest?
Well, I am pleased, and I think millions of Ethiopians are also pleased because the categorization of these 3 organizations, political organizations, as terrorist groups was not only harmful for the political space in the country, but also thousands of individuals were, charged with terrorism in connection with these 3 organizations mostly, although there are others as well. So this is a very welcome news that the parliament has unanimously passed to, remove the label of terrorism from these 3 organizations, not only for the political space, but also for individuals that have been haunted by this, by the terrorism law in the country for allegedly being connected to these organizations. So this is really a very good step in the right direction.
Now, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff says that people now can hopefully resort to peaceful discourse. Does this, for you, signal that democracy is being embraced and that people can now actually come out on the streets and be allowed to protest without being attacked and arrested?
Well, this particular bill that was removed today does not necessarily deal with the ban on public demonstration, but the public demonstration, as we have seen it the last 2 weeks, even though it is a pro-Prime Minister demonstrations, people are coming out on the street without being jailed and being harassed like it used to be before. So it's not clearly connected to the lifting of the ban on public demonstration. We're not very sure if there is going to be a protest demonstration allowed in the cities, in the country, under the circumstances currently. So the 2 are not connected to one another. However, what will come to an end is that even if individuals are going to be detained by the police now, they are less likely to be charged with terrorism in connection with these organizations, or having the alleged link to these organizations. This has come to an end.
Now, what do you think is going on? Is it that the party has come to the realization that change has to happen, or is this singularly the influence of the new Prime Minister?
Well, I think this is the party's decision. If we go back to December, when they had that deep reform meeting before the former Prime Minister resigned, they have reached into some kind of consensus that these are some of the measures that they have to take in order to survive, in order to save themselves. So although the Prime Minister is seen sometimes singularly taking some drastic measures, more or less this is the party's decision as a collective.
Indeed, we look forward to seeing more changes. What a new dawn in Ethiopia. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Tsedele, and we'll have this conversation continue another time.
Sure. Thank you.
Tsedele Lema is editor-in-chief and founder of Addis Standard magazine. To West Africa now, Nigeria's ruling party has split after a faction declared that it no longer supports the government of President Muhammadu Buhari. The move threatens Buhari's hopes of securing a second term in next year's election. A group of politicians who were part of the ruling All Progressive Congress, or APC, told a news conference in Abuja they had formed a new faction led by former Buhari ally Buba Galadima. The breakaway group is called the Reformed All Progressives Congress, or RAPC. The split comes on the heels of a ruling party convention over a week ago, during which its executives were appointed. Galadima says his faction, which he calls the authentic voice of the APC, has representatives throughout Nigeria's local government wards and states. Rifts within the ruling APC could split support for Buhari among party supporters ahead of next year's polls expected to be held in February. In nearby Mali, where election organizers have ended their two-week strike over working conditions, the strike disrupted the distribution of voting cards, but a deal between unions and government has reportedly given workers a pay raise. Malians are due to vote on July the 29th in a presidential election that many hope will end 6 years of political unrest and jihadist violence. Now, attacks by militants had cast doubt over the government's ability to hold the vote on time. Last week, militants raided the headquarters of a military base in central Mali, leaving at least 6 people dead. On Sunday, 4 civilians were killed in a car bomb targeting French troops in the north. Mali has been in turmoil since Tuareg rebels and loosely allied jihadists seized the desert north in 2012, prompting French forces to intervene to push them back. Those groups have since regained a foothold in the region, using the Sahel as a launchpad for attacks across the region. A rescue ship carrying 60 migrants picked up from rubber boats in the Mediterranean Sea arrived in a Spanish port on Wednesday after being refused entry by Italy and Malta. Tens of thousands of migrants have reached European shores this year so far, and southern European countries are refusing entry to the latest arrivals unless their burden is shared. Viewers Laditza Hoke reports.
The open arms ship docked in the port of Barcelona in northeastern Spain after a 4-day journey. Its passengers were picked up from smugglers' boats off the coast of Libya, but were refused docking in Malta and in Italy. The rescuers say that Malta and Italy now deny docking to vessels used by non-governmental groups, and as a result, many people die at the sea.
We managed to rescue 60 migrants. Unfortunately, almost 500 other people have died in the last 4 days trying to cross from Libya to Europe.
European coastal countries have been criticized for refusing to allow migrants to disembark.
Look, during these last 6 months, 50,000 people have arrived in Europe from North Africa through the Mediterranean Sea. Aren't we, 500 million Europeans, capable of managing the arrival of 50,000 people? The borders, and this trip is a good example, the borders we have in Europe are not Greek or Italian or Spanish borders, they are European borders.
But the waves of migrants from Africa may not stop for decades, and many Europeans are concerned about the burden they pose. Anti-immigrant movements are on the rise, and some countries refuse to accept any migrants. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said in an interview aired Sunday that the so-called frontline states need help processing the migrants.
Die Transitzentren haben eine Begrenzung.
The transit centers are limited because according to our constitution, we are only allowed to limit a person's freedom for a maximum of 48 hours. That means that within this time, which is until the end of the next day, the transfer to the next country must be completed.
French President Emmanuel Macron is pushing for the creation of centers for processing migrants in North Africa, so only those who are granted asylum can come to Europe.
But what we have to do is obviously first to fight against smugglers. That's my top priority. That's what we do in Sahel. That's what we want to do with Libyan government. That's why we have to fix the Libyan situation to stop that.
European countries have long called on Libya to do more to stop the smuggling of people from its shores. But the illegal business is flourishing as desperate people pay exorbitant amounts to get on a rubber boat that may take them to death or a better life. Zlatica Hope, VOA News, Washington.
Well, for the millions of first-generation immigrants in the United States whose native languages aren't common on the streets of New York or any other U.S. community, staying connected to local news and culture can be challenging. But across diaspora communities, Call to Listen radio programming is designed to fill this need and offer a respite from day-to-day hardships as immigrants, including the undocumented. VOA's Ramon Taylor has more.
Oui, c'est vous. Vous allez bien?
Every Wednesday evening at 9, Boubacar Ba settles into his Midtown Manhattan studio and begins his broadcast, Radio Mali USA, a call-to-listen radio show by Malians, for Malians, abroad.
My show, sometimes it goes to 3 hours because the cab drivers, they don't want it to end.
Ba is one of 7,000 global broadcasters across more than 150 countries affiliated with Zeno Media. Zeno Media is a streaming platform that offers diaspora populations the opportunity to connect to news of their homeland in their local languages, using either an app or by dialing a local number. Its founder and president says the idea was conceived for first-generation immigrants working in solitary professions.
If I was a security guard in a building and I didn't have that much human interaction, I was thinking, what can I provide to this person to entertain them or to make their day better? I thought to myself, if I was doing this, I would be very, very lonely.
Since becoming a broadcaster in 2009, Boubacar Ba says news of his home country is the first priority for listeners. Second are U.S. immigration issues. Ever since President Trump enacted immigration policies such as the travel ban, Ba says there has been a spike in interest about the topic, particularly among undocumented listeners. Sometimes he brings in lawyers or other specialists to talk, but offers his own advice too.
Mainly, try to stay underground. That's the main advice we tell those who don't have, papers. Don't expose yourself too much. Try to focus on what you're doing. Try to avoid illegal stuff.
Without a local station like Ba's, which broadcasts in Fulani and Bambara, many immigrants living in the U.S. might not otherwise have an outlet. In an interview via Skype, Ghana-based host Joseph Quencier describes some of what he hears from his diaspora audience in the U.S.
People see the Trump administration as like they hate people who are coming to settle in the country, and then they are going to make their lives more difficult for them in the United States.
And as Quencier and Bob both note, their programs allow listeners to pull back from all the noise and maintain an element of home, culturally, musically, and politically, no matter where they are. Ramon Taylor, VOA News, New York.
Think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Still to come on Africa 54, scientists grow first test tube rhino embryo in beads to save northern white rhinos from extinction. But first, a look at Thursday's headlines.
French President Emmanuel Macron meets Nobel Literature Prize winner Wole Soyinka during a trip to Lagos. Zimbabwean Finance Minister Patrick Chinamasa says the ZANU-PF party will have an outstanding victory in the July 30th election and expects the economy to grow by 6% this year. In Mali, a man from France searches for his mother, who's being held hostage by jihadists in the Malian desert. Scientists in Germany announced they've grown embryos containing northern white rhino DNA, potentially saving the near-extinct species that resides at the wildlife conservation site in Kenya. Finally, in Ethiopia, the government and an international development charity opened maternity wards to improve maternal and child health in the country.
Well, it's time for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with the latest maternity news from Ethiopia. Lino.
Some good news, Vincent. Maternity waiting homes have been opened in parts of Ethiopia to encourage more women to deliver at a health facility and provide proper healthcare services for pregnant women and newborns living in remote areas. The country has one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the world, and the initiative aims to address the problem. Mesgebe Weni is recovering at a maternity waiting home in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region. The 19-year-old recently lost her baby after prolonged labor and had to undergo surgery at a hospital. She is staying at the facility because it's closer to her house and she can receive the care she needs.
My house is about an hour drive from here by car. I would have lost my life if I had attempted to deliver at home and didn't receive the necessary treatment and care at the hospital.
The Ethiopian government and international development charity VSO, or Voluntary Service Overseas, are setting up maternity waiting homes in the country where pregnant women, especially those at high risk, can access proper health care. The waiting home is located at the Mulu Asefa Hospital, one of the primary hospitals found in Tigray region. Dr. Nigus Abebe is the deputy director at Mulu Asefa Hospital.
The maternity waiting home is very essential for this area. We have people living in very remote areas who could be in labor in areas that are outside mobile telephone network coverage or difficult to reach by ambulance. So we thought it would be safer for them to stay here between 3 days to 1 week before their anticipated day of delivery.
Government statistics in 2014 show that skilled assistance at delivery had increased from 6 to 10% in a span of 6 years. Pregnancy-related deaths in Ethiopia have fallen in recent years. However, maternal deaths account for 30% of women aged between 15 to 49 years. Most women still deliver at home, with 50% helped by a relative and 28% by a traditional birth attendant. Some of the risks include anemia and eclampsia, a complication marked by high blood pressure that can lead to seizures. Meseret Shifero is the health program coordinator at VSO Ethiopia.
We focused in this area because it's located in the border of Afar. So these people are nomads. They are walking around. They are not settled in one place. And this hospital is serving 1 million population. So if we set a maternity waiting home here, it serves not only the population in the ASP area, it also serves in the community coming from the other regions like Afar.
There are about 20 maternity waiting homes in the country. The government and VSO plan to expand the maternity waiting home in the future to accommodate more pregnant women and bring skilled prenatal and postnatal care to people who need it in the remote region. Turning now to cancer, scientists have designed a special drug that they say helps the body eat and destroy cancerous cells. The treatment boosts the action of white blood cells called macrophages that the immune system uses to swallow unwanted invaders. The drug works in 2 ways. First, it stops cancer cells from hiding and sending out eat me not signals to macrophages. Second, it prevents the tumor from telling macrophages to turn docile. The supramolecular therapy appeared to stop cancer from growing and spreading in the test mice. Tests showed the therapy worked for aggressive breast and skin tumors. The researchers at Harvard Medical School's Brigham and Women's Hospital behind the study hope to begin human trials within a few years. The findings are published in Nature Biomedical Engineering Journal. Now, glioblastoma is an aggressive type of cancer in the brain that medical experts say is very challenging to treat. And even with treatment, most people with this type of cancer don't live longer than 3 years after the tumor is found, but scientists are experimenting with new treatments that show promise. VOA's Carol Pearson reports on some of the research that's giving people with brain tumors new hope.
Mines was diagnosed with brain cancer 2 years ago.
I didn't even want to know anything about it because I just basically wanted to be focused on trying to get better.
Even non-cancerous brain tumors can be deadly if they interfere with portions of the brain responsible for vital bodily functions. Treatment can include surgery, chemotherapy, or radiation, or a combination of treatments. Glioblastomas are the most common form of cancerous brain tumors, and the 5-year relative survival rate is under 6%. That's the type of tumor Mines has.
I'm hoping that I will be here for longer, but it's I'm realistic too. It's glioblastoma. But I just keep fighting.
Scientists at Duke Health found they can increase the survival rate for some patients by injecting a modified poliovirus directly into the tumor. This is an example of targeted therapy. Other researchers are trying to get the body's own immune system to attack the tumors.
We're examining novel clinical trials, targeted therapies, immunotherapies, some of which look very promising right now. So there's a lot of hope for this patient population.
Dr. Arnab Chakravarti led a study at the Ohio State Comprehensive Cancer Center on the genetic makeup of gliomas, brain tumors that can be cancerous or benign. Mines was one of the participants. The researchers found they could more than double the life expectancy among patients who had a particular biomarker when treated with specific chemotherapy and radiation.
It's very important to personalize care for the individual patient, and that's why biomarkers, prognostic and predictive biomarkers, are so important.
Experts say testing genetic markers will become the standard for patients with malignant brain tumors. They're also looking at targeted drug therapies as part of individualized treatment. The hope is that one day, getting a diagnosis of brain cancer will no longer be a death sentence. Carol Pearson, VOA News.
That's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Linor Moudou. Vincent, back to you.
Well, thanks a lot, Linor. Now be sure to watch Linor Moudou's health report every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Well, orthopedic surgery can be tricky, so researchers at Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois, are engineering new materials to make 3D printed bones that are perfect match, ready for grafts. VOA's Faith Lapidus reports.
Hey, Lucy, how are you?
Orthopedic surgeon Nirav Shah specializes in shoulders and knees. He replaced Lucy Boyajian's shoulder 3 months ago. One titanium joint later, she's doing well. But what if he could have ordered up a 3D printed shoulder, customized to her measurements?
What Ramel and Adam have done is they've created something very, very unique, very, very innovative, and a game changer in many aspects. In essence, they've created a synthetic bone, if you would.
Ramel Shah is Dr. Shah's wife and a materials scientist at Northwestern University. With support from the National Science Foundation, she and engineer Adam Jacobs have developed a new 3D printed synthetic material called hyperelastic bone.
What 3D printing allows us to do also is to make patient-specific or patient-matched implants, where if a patient comes in with a defect, say a craniofacial defect, we're able to take a scan of that defect and print it into the right size and shape that fits that patient perfectly.
Unlike a bone graft from a patient's own body or from metal or traditional ceramic, the new synthetic bone is made of an elastic ceramic. So if it's squished, it bounces back to its original shape. It starts as a liquid ink and is printed out in whatever shape the doctors need. The process is fast, and everything happens at room temperature.
It deposits on a surface, and wherever we put the material, it goes where we want it to go.
They also print sheets.
So with the flat sheets, we're able to create off-the-shelf products where the surgeon can take these sheets and cut it down to size. It can be rolled as well. It can be sutured. It can be folded.
Once implanted, the hyperelastic bone promotes tissue growth and it becomes part of the patient's own bone as it regenerates.
So once implanted inside the body, the hypoelastic bone eventually becomes new bone. It becomes part of you.
The new synthetic bone is less expensive than what's been available up until now, and it handles better in the operating room. Dr. Shah says surgeons are ready to embrace this advance and its implications for improving patient outcomes. I'm Faith Lapidus, VOA News.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. A laboratory at the University of Washington's computer department could be the launchpad for the next generation of sports viewing. The Microsoft HoloLens virtual reality headset provides a researcher with a unique experience. He's watching a soccer video game with what he regards a more realistic 3D representation of a real professional match, viewed from whatever angle he chooses. A camera in the HoloLens headset shows what the viewer is seeing, with the ability for them to look from anywhere around the stadium, either at field level or high in the stands. The concept of 3D sports viewing could be a huge draw for fans, with global TV rights and sales running into billions for current 2D system. Next up, scientists have developed a new mobile app that can quickly tell whether someone has dry eye disease. The disease occurs when eyes don't produce enough tears or when tears evaporate too quickly from the surface. Women have a higher prevalence than men. The risk increases with age, but scientists believe it's on the increase, particularly among screen-addled young people. Now, researchers have developed a mobile app to diagnose the condition. The app combines simple questions with a quick test to measure how long users can comfortably stare at a screen without blinking. And that's what's trending. Now, scientists in Berlin, Germany are using the laboratory to save the northern white rhino from total extinction. After Sudan, the world's last male northern white rhino died in Kenya in March. Experts at the Leibniz Institute for Zoo and Wildlife Research have grown the world's first test-tube rhinoceros embryos. They used the sperm from the last of the male northern rhino and eggs collected from the relatively abundant southern white rhinos. They hope to have the first northern white rhino calf born within 3 years. A spokesman for the Leibniz also dismisses critics who say producing embryos in a lab interferes with nature. And that's our show for today. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. We have already learned a few idioms relating to eyes. Here is another one for you.
See eye to eye.
Do you use this phrase when you look deep into someone's eyes?
Is the yoga class over already?
I left a little early.
Why?
The instructor and I didn't see eye to eye.
You had